All right, everyone. We are here today for our third video in the series on identifying our limiting capital S stories. So this is the last video of the series, and today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about reframing our stories. And this is going to be a process that we're going to talk about today, but it can take a while for us to reframe our stories. And the reason for that is because a lot of these have been with us for a long time. So these are things that we've picked up along the way in our lives, either from our experiences or things that we've heard from our friends and family, and we've started to kind of incorporate and ingrain them into who we are and how we live our lives. So it's not just as easy as, doing a quick reframe and then everything is changed. It's something that we're going to need to work on and start small, start with little changes that we repeat to ourselves, that we practice in our lives, and then even continue further to reframe. So this is just kind of exploring how we reframe, what that would look like, and then from here, what we'll need to do is just really practice and be consistent with these reframes and even challenge ourselves to continue to reframe our stories, because it has to be something that we're willing to embrace and take a look at for us to really take the reframe into our lives, right? So what I'm saying is that we can't just go from, something like, to use the examples we've been talking about, I'm not creative, to I am an awesome, confident artist. If you don't believe it, and if it's not something you feel that you can really connect with, then the reframe isn't real. It's not gonna work. So we need to kind of build up, one little reframe at a time. So let's talk about reframing stories. So what we're doing today is we're taking that paper. So the paper we started with, where we identified our stories. Then last week what we did was we looked to identify those false rewards. We appreciated what they were giving us. But now what we're doing today is we're ready to move away from those false rewards and start to reframe our limiting stories, so that we can get to the other side. We can get to what we really want, and that's living that vibrant, joyful, passionate, connected, engaged life, the live red life that we're all working towards. So reframing is when we're taking that story and we're writing a new one. Really, we have the power. This is our life. We're able to write our story. And that's what we're doing. We're taking that original story and we're rewriting it. We're reframing it so that we can start to open up more freedom, flexibility, possibilities. So let's take the examples that we've been playing with over the past couple of weeks. So I'm not creative. We started with that limiting belief of I'm not creative. And we identified possible rewards of, keeping ourselves kind of safe and secure, of not finding out what our painting ability is. So we have this desire of wanting to paint, but we're saying we're not creative, and that's, our limiting belief, so that we can just say, well, why bother? And really that's there, and from what we've been talking about the past couple of weeks, that's there because we don't really want to know what our ability is. We don't want to know if we are what we would call, a good painter or a not so good painter. And again, I'm just going to say this again, especially with art, there's no good or bad. It's just, enjoying the process and experimenting and playing. That's just my little spiel there. But for somebody that's, wanting to paint, they may feel like, I don't want to know if I'm good or if I'm not good. They may have that feeling because, they see paintings, they appreciate, artists and the skill, and they've always wanted to try, but they don't want to know if they can do that and replicate that or not. Or maybe they want to paint, but they don't want other people to see their work, so they're feeling insecure about that. So just kind of saying, oh, I'm not creative, I'm not going to try, that keeps them safe from kind of seeing what's on the other side if they do try to paint. So if we want to start to reframe, I'm not creative, what we can do is just explore little tweaks to that statement. So again, we can't go from I'm not creative to I'm this amazing, confident artist, right? We have to do the baby steps to move us forward to whatever we end up at. So maybe instead of I'm not creative, we explore different options of I am willing to explore painting just for fun. Or maybe it's, everyone has something they're creative with, and I'm willing to find mine. Maybe it's art is for the pure joy and not good or bad. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking I'm creative and I'm trying to find something that feels like I could believe it. And I'm willing to maybe try to adopt a new story, a new belief that I can start to tell myself. So it's just going from something like I'm not creative to the next step. We're not doing anything drastic here. We're going to the next step of something that I feel like I can believe in. And then I'm going to try to start to create that as my new narrative to help me take that baby step forward. And then once I have that new narrative, maybe I'm going to take that even further to the next step, that I can be a painter. I'm moving from I'm not creative to I can be someone that paints. Maybe it's even moving further from that. So I am someone that paints, and I can be creative in my own way. So try that with your statements. Take a look at your statements on your sheet and see what the next possible reframe is. And it has to be something that you can believe in, because if it's not, then this process isn't going to work, because you're not going to invest in that new story, that new narrative. So you're just going to revert back to your old one. So that's why I'm saying do these little tweaks, something that you can believe in, and start to use that as your new story. So the next time you have that thought, I'm not creative, as soon as you think that, do your reframe. Art is about joy. Whatever it is that you decide. These are all just examples that I'm throwing out, but again, it has to be personal to you. And what you're going to do is you're going to, every time you have that old narrative, that old story come up, you're going to give yourself that reframe and say your new story and really start to embrace that new story. And then when that feels good, you're going to try to reframe even more. So it's these baby steps forward into your new story so that you can open up the possibility of painting, of trying, of doing that thing that you've desired. But I'm doing it in the step process because that's how you create real change, right? It's not just a switch that you can flick. It's this gradual progression towards making that a real true possibility for you to sustain it. If you just went and jumped in and painted one day, maybe that would feel good. For everyone is different. Maybe that's what works for you. But from what I have seen, this gradual building towards that is what really works for the long run, because you're building that internal resilience, you're building that new story so that you can move forward and stay forward rather than kind of jumping in and then, kind of getting scared and freaking out and then jumping back. You want to build into it. So another reframe, the other story we've been talking about is I have to always put my family's needs before mine. And we identified the false rewards that could be coming up. Again, these are just examples, so it's really for you to identify your false rewards. And then now thinking about the reframe. So for somebody that's used to always putting their family's needs before theirs, we can't just jump to this really drastic reframe. So, maybe it's I always have to put my family's needs before mine, moves to my needs are just as important as my family's. Or maybe I can put my needs at the same level as my family's. Maybe it's something you feel good to move to would be fulfilling my needs is just as important as fulfilling my family's needs. Or maybe it's fulfilling my needs too helps me fulfill my family's needs even better, or even in a more happier, positive way. Whatever that reframe is, it's what feels like that next step to move in a more positive direction that you can really believe in. How can you reframe what you have on your sheet in a more open, positive way that gives you some freedom and some flexibility to move away from that hard line story that you've been believing in? So again, look at your list. I want you to take that list out that you've been working on the past few weeks. And I want you to examine each one and see just how you can reframe that even just a little. Again, it doesn't have to be drastic. It can just be a little tweak. And every time you hear yourself kind of giving that narrative of your old story, you give yourself a moment to actually say your new story, whether it's out loud, whether it's in your head. And I know sometimes we're going around and we're not necessarily saying these stories, right? So it could also just be you're catching yourself. So if you're someone that has that story of, I need to always put my family's needs before mine, you may not actually be thinking that sentence in your head, but you catch yourself doing something. So you have plans today. Someone in your family calls you and they need something. Your instinct is, I need to put their needs before mine. So what I'm wanting you to do is, before you act, take a moment, take a breath, and really, remember the story that you've identified and give yourself a little bit of a reframe before you just jump into that old pattern. How can you reframe this? How can you maybe stop and make a different decision, or even just have that different story? Say it out loud. Maybe you still go and you do what you initially felt like you were called to do, but you gave yourself the opportunity to stop, to think about that new story. Say it out loud, say it in your head. And even though you may not have made a direct action change, you are still giving yourself that moment of being mindful of what's happening and thinking about the story. So that maybe next time will be the opportunity to make a different choice or approach it differently. But the point is that you've identified this. You're not just going on autopilot. You are identifying the stories. You're identifying that you want to reframe it so that you can open up to possibilities and open up to a new way of approaching your life that can give you more joy, give you more of an opportunity to feel vibrant and connected and engaged in your life. You're taking that ownership back and saying, this story isn't kind of feeling right. I'm in the process of changing it, and that's going to take some time, but you have that power, you have that ownership of that story, and you can take the actions that feel good to change that over time, to gradually move to a different story. So that's really the goal of today. So start to give yourself those reframes, write them down, and then give yourself the moments in the weeks to come, the months to come, to be aware of where that original limiting story is showing up, and start to give yourself the moments to reframe. And it may be something that's slow and gradual to actually see the changes in your life, but being aware, being mindful, and taking that control is really, really the first step of rewriting your story and creating that long-lasting change in your life that is going to lead you towards that more vibrant, engaged, connected. I know I keep saying these over and over again, but they're the keys to living red. This is what we're hoping for. This is what we're moving towards. It's that vibrant, joyful, connected, engaged, passionate life. And that's what we're doing with this activity. We're identifying any limiting barriers. We're seeing why they were there, and then we're working to reframe them and incorporate that reframe into our lives going forward. So again, I know this is not an easy process, and it is challenging. It takes time. I am absolutely here to support you along the way. Whether that's just if you have a question, reach out to me. Again, I'm just an email away or a message on Instagram or Facebook away. I'm happy to answer your questions. I'm also here to help work with you through this. This is part of what we do in the Live Red sessions. So feel free to book a discovery call anytime. It's free, no obligation, but we can just talk about this and see how we can maybe start to move you forward. And then if it feels good, we can work together through the Live Red sessions and help move you towards this change in your life. But again, we could just talk on that one call too. So it's totally up to you and what feels good for you and in your personal situation. I just want you to know that I'm here to help you through this because it is challenging. Any change is challenging. So it is always nice to just have somebody to support you through that. So thank you so much for listening to these and watching these 3 videos on stories. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. And I hope this was helpful. I hope this has given you some information about how to identify your stories and how to start to reframe them in your life. And until next time with a new Live Red video, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys later.